welcome to Integrate Live, episode 17. I think that's officially where we're at, episode 17. This is all about the OPC revolution, upping your game in the OPC world, not your father's OPC server. Alan, Alan has traveled all around the world to be here today. He is calling from his remote satellite office in
Tajikistan. I tell you, it's crazy too. Literally, they have, like, my daughter's house that I'm staying in, they have these giant gates, right? So it almost looks like a fortress. All the houses have it. I don't know why. Crime is really low, but everyone has these giant gates. But they have a doorbell cam. People could come up and knock on the doorbell. And so this guy came over and he knocked on the door, and he literally was selling coffins. And I told him, I'm like, that's the last thing I need.
Well done. Oh my goodness, I didn't see it coming.
Just coming out shots fired.
I like Dushanbe Allen even better than Bakersfield Allen. This is pretty
good.
Yeah,
that's good, because my wife doesn't. She told me this morning I have two major faults. I don't listen, and something else.
Oh, welcome everybody. Thank you. We'll fill a couple more minutes as everybody joins with some good old dad jokes. We've got Steve from Canary with us. Steve is Mr. Fix-It around Canary, serves as the Director of Customer Support and Relations. Hey, Steve, how are you?
I'm doing good. Glad to be here.
All right.
We'll say Steve is very patient. He's very patient. I literally have had to call him multiple times and ask the same thing multiple times, and every time he treats me kind. He's nice.
Yeah.
I just rolled my eyes. You can't see that through email, but it's like Alan again.
Yeah, Alan, did you restart your server?
Yeah. Did you reboot the computer? He's kind though.
And we've got Ray here. Ray from Kepware.
Yeah.
Ray is in his weekend home out on the
yes.
coast of Ray, I see the piano. I don't know if you know this, but most people thought Bach was a very wealthy man. He was actually quite baroque.
See, this is where you guys, I just can't compete with this stuff, man.
Not really? No, you're good, man.
No. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to have a good conversation and really just laugh like the fourth, the third wheel of the conversation, just at all the lovely jokes that all three of you throw out. So super excited. Thanks for having me.
You just took Steve's job, so one of the two of you is gonna have to tell his joke.
I don't have any dad jokes, but true story. Yesterday, I had to go to my local beekeeper to purchase 10 bees. He gave me 11. I said, "What's with the extra bee?" He said, "Oh, that one? That's a freebie."
That's a freebie.
Well done, Steve. Okay. Ray, do you know what Mozart's been up to lately?
No, tell me.
He's decomposing.
Hey, how many, Jeff? Have you hit the time period when you need to go get a prostate exam?
No, and I won't. I promise.
See, I did. I finally did it. Got the thumbs up.
Bam on that one. Let's get going. Wow, Alan, you are so much fun.
It's amazing they still let you join these things, Alan. I think the last one I was on, I think it was something about ibuprofen was a new laxative.
Oh, that's because I
was being developed.
I combined a laxative with ibuprofen, and I got ibuprofen. But I did make a change. I actually combined a laxative with alphabet soup, and I call it Let Her Rip.
All right. Welcome to Integrate Live. We're kicking off. We're 5 minutes past. It's time to get going. And we've got Alan in rare form today. Listen, if it's your first time at Integrate Live, thank you so much. We appreciate you joining. Something you have to know on the off start is this whole thing started from just a great work relationship between a couple of vendors, a couple of end users. And on our very first episode, Alan and I, right before we went live, I said, "Hey, Alan, how do you want to kick this thing off? How do you want to introduce everybody?" He said, "Do you know dad jokes?" I said, "Yeah, I like dad jokes." And ever since then, dad jokes have been part of our DNA. So we hope that you appreciate that. If you don't, sorry. We'll try our best.
This isn't the venue for you.
This isn't the venue for you. All right, but what are we about? We want to align end users, integrators, vendors, and the education community by three common threads. That is creating an environment that is open, transparent, and humble. So we don't pretend that we have the answers. We just want to submit what we have seen and what we think might work for you to evaluate. We want to be transparent, showing what's good, what's bad, warts and all. And we want to be completely open in our approach, in our pricing, in our the way that we work with other systems and other platforms. We need information to freely flow. So in doing that, we know firsthand from experience that we will add value to one another and for those that are pushing for change inside of their organizations. So that's what we're all about. And today,
before you go on, let me just add something that I found really kind of hit the pinnacle for me on what we set out to do here, right? So one of the things I've always wanted was to be able to, pick a problem, be able to bring vendors together, solve the problem, and then have, an end user go and like, okay, that's the cost. I can go purchase exactly what I saw and come and, literally put it on a bench and configure it and get it working by just replaying the episode, right? And so Opto, we did the power monitoring, and I actually got to help an end user, right, that wanted to use power monitoring on a big motor. And I was like, man, look, go watch this. He bought the power monitor, bought the Rio power monitor, brought it in, hooked it up, configured it, and got it up and going all the way into Canary. And just from that episode, so it was great.
That's great. That's great. That's the goal, right? So what you're going to see today, what you're going to see on future projects is always to that end goal. Hey, let's talk about a exciting project that's coming the last Wednesday of May, first Wednesday of June. It's a two-part project. So back-to-back weeks of build-outs, calling it data management and analytics in a post-Pi era. Listen, OSI Soft's sale to Aviva now 4 years ago, was the beginning of what many have considered the end. I know there's certainly Aviva fans out there that are saying, no, it's going to be fine. Maybe it will. History has not proven that to necessarily be true. So we are going to dive into how do you cover the functionality of a complete Pi build out in the asset framework side as well, by doing it without platform lock, without sacrificing interoperability, and at a price point that will make you think, how can I do it this affordably? So more details to come on that. If you want to go ahead and register for that now, and we'd love you to do that, I'm going to go ahead right now and drop inside of the chat the registration for that. We've just opened registration for that. There will also be an email, but go ahead and look in the chat and you'll see the link. By the way, the chat's there for you to ask questions throughout the project. Give us your best dad joke. Tell us where you're calling in from or watching from. And again, anything that you'd like us to discuss as we're building this project, questions for Ray, questions for Steve, we're happy to take those there. Okay. Ray, you ready to give us an overview a little bit of what we're going to see today from the Kepware side?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, I think what what we've discussed from an architecture perspective, right? We won't really want to focus from a Kepware technology perspective is really what our Kepware Plus offering is. This is sort of a new solution product that's out in the market that we've put out here from the Kepware team at PPC, and what we're really focusing on is helping enterprise customers that need standardized connectivity be able to not only leverage the sort of tried and true drivers and protocol translation functionality that our Kepware server product today provides, but also enable our customers to be able to scale and deploy much easier and much quicker. So this is including some new features that include some SaaS-based configuration management, which can simplify the ability to configure multiple Kepware instances across your enterprise. So it's a really exciting new feature that we released about a year ago now, and continuously iterate on adding new configuration management tools, new visualization on versioning of Kepware servers that you do have installed on your premises and things like that. So it's definitely exciting. I think the next slide, if you want to go to the next slide, Jeff, I really want to highlight, for people that are either new to Kepware or maybe they're veterans of leveraging our technology and our products and trying to understand what does this really entail. I'd like to bring in this architecture. I call it the architecture diagram to really help highlight a couple key things. One is what Kepware Plus is really in providing you is the on-premise servers that you use today, as well as that SaaS configuration management layer. And there's a couple things I like to highlight. One is that the SaaS part of this solution is focused purely on configuration management of your Kepware instances. So it's not designed to bring data into the cloud, into our cloud for you to then access, from those
say
systems.
That again, Ray. Say it again to make sure it stands out.
Just focuses on configuration management. The data is still yours. You're still dictating where your industrial data goes, and that's what those green lines sort of in the middle there is really highlighting. Is it's still up to you, and it's still in your control of managing and owning where that data and information is coming from. So what Kepware Plus is configuration management and SaaS tools are providing is not data collection. And I know that can be, some customers would be okay with that if that was their strategy or it meets their use case needs. But there's many industries and customers that are still, either through regulatory practices, processes and requirements, or just internal practices are still, bound by really keeping that data in-house and within their data centers. So this is not, exposing that data to any other system that you wouldn't have complete control over. It's really about configuration management and making it easier for you as the end user to be able to configure, eventually update, manage, see versioning, see event log and diagnostics information from those multiple instances of Kepware.
Today if we think about the business problem that we're solving today, right? We've got people in the audience right now that've got dozens and sometimes maybe hundreds of Kep servers across their organization that they have to manage, right?
Yep.
We've got folks that are, depending on their industry, that might constantly also be adding tags to those servers, that are historizing that information and living in this repetitiveness of finding tags, adding tags, managing servers, bringing tags over to the historian. And today, the use case that we're solving for, that was going to show you this technology, it's also going to highlight some technology that Steve's going to talk about, is going to be the idea that you've got 3 lines that are set up, each with their own individual Kep server. You want to be able to easily manage those lines, and you're going to add a 4th line, and you want to have to do nothing to be able to, once you've added those tags, to be able to start bringing that data into your data pipeline, right? And that's what we're going to demonstrate. So for the audience, there's your business use case for today. It's all about OPC management. And this is one of the really nice tools that Kepware has released that is moving forward to make that easier and easier release after release moving forward. So pay attention to Kepware Plus. It's going to, right now, it might feel like, okay, well, that's a small benefit. But when you see the power here today, and when you see where it's going long-term on the roadmap, I think you'll be excited about it.
Well, I think the other thing too, Jeff, that this does is it solves the problem that we all have as end users, right? We always have a need where we like, hey, I've got this piece, this device, I got to get the data from this device into this system. And then you end up getting asked by your CIO or your manager or somebody saying, hey, this Industry 4.0 thing, and how are we going to leverage or monetize our data to be able to help us be sustainable, what have you, right? And you start to recognize your handcuff because, oh, well, I only have the Allen Bradley driver. I don't have the IoT driver for Kepware. Right. But if you had the whole suite of tools, now your opportunities open up, and now you can actually start to make decisions not based off of, oh, I got to go buy this driver, and then my ROI is this. No, right. Now you just open up the opportunity to be able to really take advantage of the democratization of all that data and send it where you need to send it.
Yeah. Not only will you pick up all of the drivers, all of the plugins, right? Now all of a sudden I've got IoT Gateway available to me as well.
Exactly.
You're making the life of whoever it is inside your organization that manages just the licensing side of all of this and the renewal side of all of this. You're probably actually at a net wash just from the time that you saved there.
Well, hey, look, if we're honest, as an end user, I know I've duplicated my licenses because I didn't know I had a license here, and I bought a license when I had a license, and because you're siloed, and Tony bought one last year, you didn't know it, so you went and bought one because you thought you needed it, and now you've got multiple licenses. You don't even know you have multiple licenses. You're paying for both of them.
Yeah. And that's a transition, right, for companies and really understanding that I'm not focusing on just point solutions anymore. I'm really looking at my operations holistically and really need to understand, what licensing do I have? Where is this being deployed? What versions am I running on? Do I need to upgrade these versions because of a security vulnerability or a notice that's been provided from the industry? So there's a lot of those factors that play into it, in Kepware Plus as a solution, and with these extra sort of new features and tools like the UA Gateway, which we'll really focus on later in this conversation, help those customers out with being able to move quickly, with those problems and situations.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and quickly pivot. Let's talk about the second piece of the demo today we're going to see. It'll be integrated in back and forth, but Steve, you're going to be in charge, obviously, of Canary. The overview of Canary, 3 steps. I bet you know it by heart.
Yeah, this will be my sales pitch that I never have to make. So yeah, we 3 general steps here. There's the collection component, which we'll demo today, is specifically with the OPC UA collector. So once that data is stored in our historian, right, that's the main, I would say, hub of the Canary software is our historian. Then we have all these other services built around that for reporting and adding some contextualization on top of that. You can see on the right there, that's Axioms, like our trending software, our reporting software. So, and then that can be used for reporting, and then we can also share that data with other third parties with through our API, through ODBC. We can publish data out over MQTT. So, trying to make that data as easily accessible to other end users as possible. But yeah, we'll demonstrate a little bit of OPC and show a little bit of Axiom as well.
Perfect. And for the audience at home, here is the architecture that we're going to be working from today. So if we think about this kind of in steps approach, Ray is going to step us through here at the bottom left. Ray's going to step us through the Kepware Plus cloud configuration. He's going to show how, using Kepware Plus, he's able to connect to an edge agent that is installed locally. That edge agent will then be responsible for the configuration of an OPC UA gateway. That gateway is what is then essentially federating multiple KEP servers, here represented by 3 different lines. So you'll have, Ray will demonstrate how he has access to all of these KEP servers in the field by only accessing this OPC UA gateway. From there, Steve is going to demonstrate some new technology around logging data. Everybody's like, well, what do you mean OPC UA data logging is pretty standard? Well, you're going to see something different that I think you haven't seen before. Certainly got me excited when I saw it. And then that's going to push it into the historian. And that's going to be our demo today. So it sounds simple, but you're going to see a whole different way to manage this type of a environment than what you've seen before. So I'm excited for us to kick off. I said excited to kick off. So, hey, Ray, you're up. Show us the step 1. You have to give me your screen share, and I'll get you popped up on
that. Absolutely. Let me go ahead and share my screen.
While that's coming up, my team sent me a Get Better Soon card. I was shocked because I didn't feel bad. And they said, no, we think you can actually do better.
Robbie, I see your questions. We'll come to you on answers on that in just a bit. All right, Ray, there you are.
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Ray, I'm going to go full screen just for a little bit. And
yeah,
here we go.
Oh, it sounds great.
See Alan then.
So, lovely seeing Alan. He's got a face for radio from what I hear. So, sorry, that's my bad attempt at a dad joke.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
keep doing it. I think that was good.
So what we're looking at here is basically the portal for Kepware Plus, and as I sort of mentioned earlier, this is designed to help give you that single pane of glass view of your infrastructure and your enterprise of Kepware instances. And you can get access to various dashboards, which can give you versions and information about those versions and instances that exist out in the field. And then what you have is also a list of sites, which are just logical groupings of Kepware instances. So maybe these are different locations or different part of your architectures that you kind of group together logically, just so you can quickly find those instances. So for this demonstration, I've built out a factory scenario that has a few different servers. So when I go to this site, I can start to see information about the servers that are deployed. We can see versioning information right from this dashboard. We can see the agents and whether the agents are online. These agents are basically brokering the configuration calls necessary to the on-premise servers. And this is leveraging, secure edge technology, outward connection establishment. So it's really about ensuring that configuration data is closely managed and secure, not accessible to any sort of outside applications. So if you were sort of deploying this initially, you would have your edge agent deployed. We would go and create server instances, which really define which agent am I going to go through to broker the configuration connections, and then basically the API endpoint information so that the agent knows how to interact or where to reach that Kepware instance that we're working with. So that's kind of the basic setup that you would walk through is install the edge agent, which is just running an installer that sort of has all the packages and modules necessary to deploy that edge agent, and then just identifying what's the configuration API endpoints in Kepware that I need to target so I can start to configure and see some of this status, and then also manage the configuration. So if we drill into this server, this is the server that is going to be running, and that has, some assets that it's connecting to, but it also has new features that are exclusive to this Kepware Plus enterprise-based packaging called the UA Gateway. And this gateway is designed to help aggregate UA sources across your enterprise so that you can essentially have a single UA endpoint to be able to see the distributed UA servers or assets that leverage UA in your in your facility or in your location. This makes it much easier for applications like Canary, and I think what Steve's going to be able to show is it's a sort of a single place that you can go to help identify and gather the information and data from all those underlying UA systems that are across your enterprise. What it can also do, right, is provide you some boundaries to help add those security through layers type approaches in your architecture. So you could have this gateway kind of be the security broker to connect to your UA servers as well. So applications don't have to necessarily drill down into the OT network. They can leverage this gateway, which can run in the DMZ layer, for instance, and then broker that information very quickly and easily. So to configure the UA gateway, we can use Kepware Plus to create the endpoints of that UA gateway. So we can create the endpoint in the gateway, identify the various security permissions that are available. We can identify the port, what protocol to use, what network adapter it's being exposed at, and we can create multiple endpoints as well to this UA gateway. So you can, again, sort of segment out your data flow as necessary based on sort of the network architectures and requirements that you're working with. Now, that's for systems like Canary to be able to connect to the gateway. Now, to bring in those underlying UA servers, we create what are called client interfaces inside of the UA gateway. And what this is really doing is it's creating that brokered connection down to the lower level UA servers and giving you the ability to configure and establish the security parameters necessary to be able to create those connections. So we can create those connections, identify the certain policies to authenticate with the servers, whether we use different security policies or not to connect to those UA servers. So this is where you configure, okay, how does the gateway connect to that lower level UA server? So you're kind of going through the connection establishment through this process. Now, the beauty of this is once you create these connections, that's all you need to do to access the data from those underlying UA servers. And what I mean by that is that you don't need to import tags. You don't need to build a list of data points that are accessible from those downstream UA servers. I'm using UA Expert here, a UA client to connect to the gateway. And what we can see is without any tag importing or any configuration, I am now browsing and accessing the downstream servers to gather data. So just using a standard UA client, I can browse through any of those connections that are established and access any of the downstream data very quickly and easily with very minimal configuration. And this really helps. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Just to say it back to you. One endpoint from a client perspective to be able to see everything that is connected to the gateway.
Exactly. That's essentially what I've done here is the UA client is connecting to the gateway, and I can inherently see those UA servers immediately and can browse the whole namespace and access any of the nodes and any of the data that those servers have.
Francisco just asked the question that was immediately on my mind. Alan, you're on mute. I saw you. I think you had the exact same question coming as well. What's the latency hit? When is it appropriate to do this? When is it not appropriate to do this based on latency?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the early indications from the testing that I've done with the product, and we've had a few early adopters evaluating the UA Gateway and leveraging it early on. I've personally seen pretty negligible latencies. The way that the gateway is designed, it's really designed as a pass through for that information. So it's really, pretty minimal overhead between that downstream UA server going through the UA gateway. And you can imagine too, right? Typically what we're doing here is we're doing subscription-based data collection. So it's really about how quickly is that data being sent from the UA server, and the gateway's response and funneling that up to the client is pretty minimal from our testing that we've done.
And going back to your original configuration, Ravi's first question, which was if you have the gateway Kepware Plus Manager on premise in plant 2, and you have 3 instances of Kepware in that plant, once you make your endpoint connection, you're going to see all 3 of those instances and all the tags from those instances.
Yes, exactly. Yep, that's exactly what we're kind of demonstrating here. Yep. I don't have the slide with the architecture, but these are essentially the 3 other Kepware or even third-party UA servers, or it could be an embedded UA server on a PLC. These are those 3 UA servers, and that information is immediately accessible through the browsing functionality that UA provides.
Yeah, so we're on the gateway here in the middle, right? You're connected to the gateway right now with your client tool, and you are browsing line 1, line 2, line 3 via that single endpoint. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Kepware Plus configuration management in the cloud is just the configuration for that gateway. You're not connecting to the cloud, seeing all your data there, correct?
100%. Yes. All this is doing, all that the Kepware Plus, configuration management tool is doing here is just looking at configuration data and some diagnostics data like the event logs. I could go, like I said, there's dashboards for looking at versions across your enterprise, across all those sites that are configured. But again, focus on just configuration management and sort of diagnostics and not data flow, right?
There's a good question about firewall configuration, which if I understand this right, I can have an outbound connection, which is a source destination for the gateway to my cloud, but then internal to my site, I can also have an outbound connection, source and destination from my UA server to the gateway. And the gateway that's a persistent connection, or do I need to have that?
Are you talking about the UA connection specifically, or
the UA to the gateway? So you have 3 UAs down in the plant, and I have my gateway that sits in my DMZ. And so,
so the configuration for that, right? These are still leveraging sort of standard client server connections for UA for
IP,
that gateway
source destination.
Exactly. Yeah. So the standard
as you need it to, based off of port and IP.
Exactly, and that's where the gateway can be really useful, because you can provide that software barrier along with the network barriers to be able to control access. A bunch of different rules
for all your different devices. You're just connecting your UA server to the gateway, and now you're getting access to all the devices that are connected to that UA server on the backside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. And sort of some fringe use cases as well that can help from a security perspective is you might have UA servers or assets in the field that maybe use older legacy or legacy security policies from a UA perspective. And so the gateway can sort of, again, sort of be a barrier to not expose that, let's say, insecure UA connection to, your business systems that don't inherently live on the OT network, and they can leverage more modern or the latest and greatest security to provide that data northbound from the gateway.
Awesome.
So you can imagine that can extend into like tunneling scenarios, right? The gateway can help provide sort of tunneling type architectures as necessary, based on your use case, and for industries like oil and gas and renewables and things like that, where assets live out in a physical field, that might be very advantageous.
How does some questions on security on client? So you've got a user who's only able to access based on security a certain set of tags at a Kep server. What happens when that user connects via gateway?
Yeah, so the gateway leverages the same user permissions and configuration within the server. So I actually have, the Kepware server that's running that UA gateway. So what's important to know too is the UA gateway is a component within a Kepware server instance for this. So the user management would be, dictated by the same sort of security policies and user management configuration within our product. And with, to highlight this is actually a really good point to discuss as well, is this flavor of our product that's part of the Kepware Plus package has Active Directory integration as well. So I can actually go and create and add Active Directory users or user groups to help provide configuration and data access permissions for our UA gateway and UA connections with that. So that can even simplify data access or configuration access as well.
Yeah, you can start to manage your users in a group instead of having to put them in every single gateway.
Yeah, leveraging your, in many cases, right, your user management and access control tools instead of worrying about application-specific access control users. Oh, great questions.
Yeah. Let's start to pivot, Ray. Just watching the clock. Let's start to pivot toward show us how tag creation works.
The tag creation within the Kepware Plus. Is that yeah? Sorry, I looked at the sum. I was.
I don't know if that was for me to start sharing. I was like, I don't.
I wasn't sure if that was a segue to Steve or not, but
I was hoping Alan would fill in with a dad joke there. I was
like, I've got 8 or 9 more on hand.
Not a dad joke, but something that I've learned. Whatever you feel internally is an uncomfortable period of silence, that awkwardness right there that you felt, the audience actually will tolerate 3 times more when your clock starts going off inside your head on any type of a presentation. Know that the audience isn't feeling the same thing you're feeling. You're good.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting fact. So if we look at the, so I'm looking back at the configuration manager here. You'll notice if you're used to Kepware's configuration, it's going to look very similar. We have our connectivity area, and this is where we'd create our channels, devices, tags, and tag groups that exist within our Kepware configuration. So we can go here and, if I want to add a new tag group to this laser cutter, because I want to start to build out maybe a namespace structure, I can say group 1, for instance, if I can spell. Add this tag group here. And again, this is going to instantly change that configuration here. So we're looking at through the traditional local client, we can see group 1's already added to that configuration. If I go back to that tag group and maybe add a quick tag, and let's just say this is a ramping tag. This is a simulator device in our product, so I'll just create a ramping tag with a particular address. This is getting added here. Again, if I go back to my Kepware configuration, we can see that tag's immediately added. So you're seeing the traditional add, modify, delete functionality working real time on that Kepware instance that's being deployed. And I'm doing this from our SaaS cloud infrastructure. So you can see it's very responsive and how quickly it's doing those calls and getting the feedback from the system, and updating the tags. So again, I can do the same thing. Let me go ahead and just delete that tag group. It's going to give me a confirmation just to make sure I know what I'm doing. If I go back to my Kepware instance, we can see that tag group's already deleted and the tag that I just created is gone. So very responsive and sort of giving you access, quick access to be able to make those changes. Do you want me to add that new line as part of the UA Gateway now, or do we want to wait and table that until after we go through some of the stuff?
Let's wait on that.
Okay, perfect.
So Steve, could you walk us through, if you would, will you walk us through, so the next step, if we just think about where we're moving now. So we've got our federated access point of the UA Gateway. Now, Steve, we want to set up a logging session, not off of each of the Kep servers, but off of the UA Gateway itself. And we want to be able to account for future gateways. I'm sorry, for future servers that might get added. So a line 4, a line 5, a line 6, without having to go back and rebuild logging files. That's your challenge. Show us how you'll do it, please.
Okay. Do my best.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
You know what you call a cheap circumcision? A ripoff.
That doesn't sound pleasant at all.
Get what you pay for, man.
Screen 1.
Steve, we are seeing your screen. I don't know if I've got your Canary admin.
That might be my screen because I pulled up the Canary admin.
Oh my goodness, sorry.
That's right.
We passed that 3 seconds.
Yeah.
No panic mode.
That's funny. So Steve, I do not see your feed yet.
All right.
Steve needs a
Nope,
StreamYard version.
I don't want that one. I need screen 1.
How many screens you got, Steve? Like 8
I got
over there?
2.
All right, Steve.
All right, can you see the admin now?
Yes.
Look at us.
All right. So
Killing it.
this is the admin. So this is what we use to manage all of our various Canary services, the main one being the historian. So depending on what components of Canary you have installed will dictate what other tiles you get within the application here. So just a quick look here at the historian. We call these data sets, just like basically a folder structure. And so if I click into one of these, we create daily files, which we store data for. So I click on some tags and here's some data. So the historian, again, is the main component. And then everything else, for the most part, is built around either writing data to the historian or reading data out from it. So right now we're going to look specifically at the OPC collector. This is our UA client for connecting to something like the UA Gateway or some other OPC UA server. So right now I've got a few sessions that are already running, and some of these are tag based and some of them are path based. So I'll kind of demonstrate the difference between those. So the traditional way would just be tag based. So I have something like this session that I have running here where you can see the individual tags, right? We're connecting to a UA server, we're browsing something in here. So I think these came from a branch, this Travis branch. So, again, just browsing through the hierarchy, selecting some tags, and then adding them to the logging session. So this would be the original tag-based method where you are going to each individual branch and adding what you want specifically.
And the pain points with this, like to the integrators and the community, right?
Right. These tags could come across multiple branches. So it can kind of be tedious to go through and pick out which ones you want. It could be time consuming to do that. And then the other component is, well, maybe new tags have been added, what Ray just demonstrated. So there's no subscription, automatically finding new tags. You'd have to come back in here, browse again, find those new tags that have been added, then add them to the current logging session. Which is fine, you can do that. So, but what we have done with version 23 is, if I create a new session, right, you've got two options, the traditional tag-based option, or now we have path-based. And if you're familiar with like MQTT, right, you subscribe to a topic, and then whatever's being published to that topic, we would consume and collect that data. So this is in the same vein that, we're not subscribing to individual tags. We're going to go after a specific branch or node within the UA gateway or the UA server, and whatever is being logged to those branches, we're going to pick up automatically. So I'm going to pick the path-based one. And then we've got a few session settings here. So we'll call this Kepware. The historian, so where I'm going to log this data. So I have a local historian, typically wouldn't be the case. Usually our collector would be on some other server. So I would point this to the historian machine, or I can send it to multiple historian machines if I want. If I have my architecture has multiple destinations I'm trying to send data to. Here's this data set prefix, that folder within the historian, which data set are we going to store it in? So I'll just keep it the same as the session name. And then tags per data set. So if whatever we're subscribing to would exceed 25,000 tags, it would create a new data set. So we would have Kepware, and then we have Kepware 2, Kepware 3, and so on, depending on how many tags we're actually logging. You can create a new file within the historian. I'm going to choose to sync tags to the historian. So this would be used in conjunction with this auto browse functionality. So you can auto browse whenever we start the session, or you can do it at scheduled time. So you pick a time of the day, and then the amount of hours. So every hour, I want this to go and rescan the branches that I'm choosing to log. And so if there's any new tags that have been added, or if some tags have been removed, it will pick those up. And so if I have this box checked to sync tags to the historian, if tags have been dropped out of the UA server, this will then automatically drop them out of the historian. Will no longer continue to log them and to keep persisting those tags. So I'm just going to do it on session start. And so the location of the Kep server that I'm connecting to is my endpoint. Here's the port that I need, and I can make a secure connection if I want. I'm just going to make an anonymous connection for this demonstration.
Hey, Steve, I have a question on that session start.
Yep.
Does that mean that you need to restart the session to get the new tags?
Yeah, so only when you stop and start, if there are new tags to be found, you would have to. That would be a manual intervention then to do that.
And to do that, you go into the homepage and you're turning off the collector?
Yeah, so you can see up here, some of these other sessions have stop and start. You could do it here, or you could do it on the status screen.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
But it's a manual.
If you're looking to just let it go as is, and not have to intervene at all, then you would do it on a scheduled time, then pick, maybe I only want to do this once a day. So at the smallest interval we would support is every hour. So we figure that's sufficient enough to, if you have to wait an hour before new tags come on, that's okay.
Yep.
And for today, Alan, it's Steve decided to do it on session start simply because we're going to demonstrate the technology. And as many dad jokes as I don't think you could fill an hour.
I could, but you'd hear the same one multiple times.
Well, and they would become uncle jokes very quickly, I think.
Yes.
All right, so we've added this session. So a session can have multiple groups within it. So a group essentially, maybe one group has a different sample interval than another. So I think this one at the bottom has 2 groups in it, but essentially you need at least one group per session. And then within each group, we can subscribe to multiple paths within that group. So I'm going to browse and I'm going to grab, let's see. I'll grab this oil and gas. So on the right, you're not selecting individual tags. We're just showing a preview of what is in that path. So I'll hit apply. So I'll grab that branch and then we'll grab the wastewater one. Okay. So as of right now, this would grab all the tags in there in both of these. Maybe you don't want all of the tags in there. Maybe there's only a specific one. So on top of the paths that you subscribe to, you can then apply filters to either include or exclude tags from that path. So if we look at the oil and gas, I know there were some in there that contained barrels. So you can just use a keyword, right? So any tag that would contain barrels in it would be either included or excluded, depending on what you want to do. But the filter here actually uses regular expressions or regex rules, if you're familiar with those. So you can be a little bit more advanced with your filter. So if I want to include anything that starts with barrels, I would use the caret. So anything that starts with barrels will now be included. So I'll add that. Check the include box. And then maybe there's something in there that I want to exclude. So again, using a little more sophisticated regex rules here, I'm going to exclude anything that has a dot underscore. I had to put this backslash in here. That's regex. The dot means any character, so I want to escape that functionality of the dot. So I'll put a backslash dot. So it's a literal dot underscore. Sorry, it's a little geeky with the regex rules. All right, so I want to exclude anything that would have this, so I'll leave that unchecked. So as far as filters go, if there's an inclusion rule, only those tags are included. So this should only include stuff that starts with barrels, but then out of those tags, if any of them contain this dot underscore, the exclusion rules will always override an inclusion rule. Okay, and then I'll just leave the other path as is. So I'll hit apply.
And Steve, I noticed there's a save to CSV file here also, so you can preview your work before you commit it to logging. That's nice.
Yep. So I think I have one of those actually already created. So essentially it does 3 sections that I've highlighted here. So the top one, these are tags that are not in the config, but were on the server. So this would be a scenario in which new tags are added, but it hasn't done its browse yet to pick them up. So, these would be like waiting to go into the logging session. And then the biggest chunk is going to be the middle one. These are tags that are both, within those branches and they're actually being logged. And then the final one, the end here, these are tags that are in the logging session, but are no longer in the UA server.
Oh, wow.
So on its next update, these would get dropped out of the session.
So just this felt super cheesy. To the audience, I had no idea that Steve had this CSV file. Steve and I did not rehearse any of this. I didn't. That wasn't a planted question about the CSV. I just noticed it. I'm super impressed by that third part, Steve. The dead tags that are getting ready to essentially be dropped. That's pretty swift.
Yeah, and so if I go back to the settings here, again, that's where the sync tags to historian comes into play, because we will essentially obsolete those tags from the historian, and it's syncing with what's in the UA server with what we're showing, what we're storing in the historian.
Wow. Okay. So at this point, you just basically go live on the session and you're demonstrating on your local box. But Ray, you've built, with Steve's help, you've built the same thing for your 3 lines. Is that accurate? Oh, sorry, Ray. I got you. You're on mute by default.
Hey, thanks. As usual, the double mute got me. Didn't see that one, but yes, yeah, that's essentially what we've built out here. So for those 3 servers, we've built some browse paths specifically, and I think the last sort of piece of the puzzle we wanted to sort of show is right now we're currently publishing some of that data to a Canary instance, and what does it look like when I need to bring in a new line,
Right.
and sort of bring in that data into that historian.
Steve, do you have a visualization of what Ray's currently publishing?
Yes. Let me.
Sorry, let me give you over on the screens. Oh,
you see that?
We've got it. And is Ray publishing actively?
I don't know if he's publishing actively.
I realized it wasn't turned on.
Okay, well, there you are.
A minute ago, so you should start seeing data here in a second.
Here, let's go full screen, Steve. I'm not seeing, if you can full screen your view, please.
Yeah, so it looks like it's coming in now.
All right.
Can you see that?
Yeah, you're cut off on the side though, with your left to right.
Okay.
Can you zoom out just a bit with the? Thank you. All right. So what are we looking at, Ray? You've got 3 presses.
Yeah, exactly. So currently we have 3 different lines. Each of them happen to have a press. They have some other assets too, that are being published, but the presses, right, we're monitoring, I believe, some temperature, pressure, current type, current and voltage statistics and monitoring on those machines and assets. So what we really want to do is look at, so I think where we're going to go next, right, is like, what does that look like when we add another line that happens to have a press on it as well?
That's right. So just for the audience, because I'm sure there's people that are not familiar with Canary that might be saying, what am I seeing right now? This is Axiom, which is Canary's web-based dashboarding tool. Steve and I this morning said, hey, it'd be cool to show this. Let's just go ahead and build an asset model of a press. So what Axiom is doing right now is reading Canary's asset structure and saying, oh, I see I've got 3 presses. And with 5 minutes worth of effort, I created a visualization with Steve this morning that is just demonstrating these 3 tags of a press. So you've got a running tag in a data table, and you've got a current and a temperature tag currently showing the plot for the last 2 minutes. So that's done. Now, Ray, you're ready to browse and add a 4th press. Is that what?
Yeah. Essentially, we'll do that. So if we go back to our Kepware configuration UI, I can now go to the UA Gateway and say, okay, let's. My authentication has timed out, so give me a second here. Probably have to relog in. There we go. So we have those 3 UA servers, and those are the 3 lines that we're really connecting to. So let's go ahead and add that 4th line here. So I will add a 4th line here. I'll call it UA server number 4. The URL to get to that is going to be UA server 4. So it's running on a different host. The port for this endpoint is there. I'm going to keep anonymous. Actually, no, I am going to change. So this server in particular needs a specific username and password to access the data. So we're going to go ahead and give it the username and password to authenticate. So this is doing the authentication from the gateway down to this 4th line's UA server so that we can ensure that it's authenticating appropriately based on that connection. Give it a moment here. That should connect. unless I fat fingered something. Let me double check the event log and see what it says. Let's see, these are. Okay. Let me just double check here. I may have mistyped something.
Steve, do you see oil and gas as one of the
There we go.
really industries that's going to benefit from this logging technique?
Yeah, I mean, you think of all the assets that they have, and I mean, obviously, if whatever you can automate, that's going to be a huge benefit, right? Less intervention, and you just think of all the assets that an oil and gas company might have, and so they're adding things to UA server that we're consuming from, assuming they're adding them in the right spot, or we're going after the correct branches, then it's just going to populate automatically all the way up to something we're going to see here, even into the visualization component.
Yeah, you think about a well, right? You have you're consistently drilling and adding wells to your system. If the if the engineer knows what the well is going to be, it's being completed, and then he can send in a ticket, or if he has access, he can go in and just add that well, give the well name, give the location, and it propagates all the way into Canary and starts collecting data.
Ray, is there a and I'm sorry, we're going to be on a little tangent for just a second, but
no problem.
Is there a way in this use case where there's some type of a template that engineer who's just adding a well we know it's going to be one of these 4 varieties of a well.
Can I copy and paste server 4 and just change it to 5 and the IP name?
In this case, the copy and pasting of the particular object isn't quite built out of the UI yet, but we can do some importing and exporting to be able to facilitate that. So it's kind of like the first step was doing some sort of import and export of particular channels, devices, connections, those sort of objects. But
so
being able to
export it, goes to like a CSV file, copy and paste your server 4, add server 5, replace 4 with 5, import it back in, and it populates 5. And
yes, yeah, and so this is where, right, the fact that the configuration layer is a SaaS type component of the solution does allow us to iterate on this much quicker without having to impact or develop or release, let's say, a new on-premises Kepware server. So the data and the API and the information's already here. So this is really just a UX type feature that just needs to be added, and we'll be able to quickly iterate on that and add that without even impacting your deployment that's already on premise with those changes. So that's kind of that's part of the benefit, right, of having that abstraction layer where this is sort of SaaS managed, is that us as a product provider, we can iterate much quicker, much faster on some of these features that don't impact the production systems and features that are built into it.
Okay. Well,
great question.
Server connected. Sorry, we
yes. No, that's okay. Yeah, I was just being impatient apparently, so it just needed a moment to make that connection. But we can see here now that the gateway is connected. We're seeing some positive status there from the connection. And so what we're going to do now is go to the Canary collector here, and I'm gonna stop it here for a moment so we can basically add a new.
This is the part where we're not going to wait for the hour, so we configured this to be on
exactly.
Restart.
Yep.
Okay.
So we'll go ahead.
We've got 1, 2, 3. If you pull that window down real quick for us, if you would, just show us what's behind it.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now, what you're logging is right here, correct? This is your current.
Yeah. So this is a collection of paths to the different assets on these UA servers that we're connecting to. But in this case, right, we're going to add a 4th UA server and bring in the information and assets from those. So now I'm going to go and as Steve showed earlier, be able to add a new path. And you can see here already that UA server 4 is accessible through the UA gateway. I didn't have to do anything beyond just adding that connection.
Mhm.
And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the root of that path as the node that we're going to be using to pull in all the data. So I'm not even going to select the different assets that this UA server might have. I'm going to just provide a path that's going directly to the UA server through the gateway.
Yeah.
And as Steve said, right, I can do some sort of fancy filtering and additional exclusion rules, so I don't pull in every data point in the server potentially. In this environment, I know there's 2 assets that we're going to be connecting to, so it won't be a lot of tags, but it'll be some tags that are going to have a press and another asset on this line that we're going to be able to pull in. So I'll go ahead and hit apply here.
1 second.
I'll go ahead.
Before you go too far forward, Ray. So Steve, what if we didn't want to have to do that, right? Because the concept here is, how would we have set this? Let's use a second group as an example. How would we set this up to go to the parent, to the highest level, instead of going to server 1, 2, 3 level?
Right. Yeah. You would just go to the next, higher, the parent level above the.
Okay.
The server 4.
To now.
Yeah.
Whatever you subscribe to, it's that branch and anything underneath it. So if they're all falling under the same branch that we're going after, then then there's no intervention needed at all.
Will you walk Ray through that? By Ray, let's do a new group real quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go ahead and
leave that group as it is. And Steve, what's he gonna do now to create that new?
Yes. So if you hit apply, or maybe we want to do let's just do a new session instead.
Okay.
We want to do
path-based session.
Yep. So we'll have to
make sure I get all of this.
Yeah, sorry. Just want to make sure that if somebody watching back.
No, absolutely.
Welcome to Integrate Live.
58220, I believe, is the default. Okay, that should be good.
We can just keep the defaults for everything else.
Yeah.
And then select your group and select browse.
All right, that means I got it correct.
So from here, what's he do, Steve?
So from here, these would
not up high enough.
What's that?
You need to go up another level, right? Because right now you're seeing your
right. So if there isn't a higher level than this, I don't know if there,
Okay. So the flaw is in our. Got it.
Right.
The flaw is in the way that we architected our demo, because we flattened each line instead of having part of
right.
Then you put another level there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Audience, follow along with.
So that's the top level. We can't go higher than
Yeah. Okay. But understand that, to the point that if you had a 2-level system or a 3 or more level system, you would just subscribe to the highest level, and everything else that gets added later on is going to automatically come in. That's what I wanted to drive home and make sure that we saw.
Right. Okay. And if there's maybe there are certain branches in that lower levels you don't want, that's where you would say, okay, I need to apply some filters to exclude some stuff, or maybe I only want to include stuff that's in line 1. So anything else that's coming under line 1, it'll only grab that.
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for humoring me and going down that.
Yeah, that's really where the filters come in really handy, right? Because let's say you're setting up a session to pull barrels, but you're connected to PLCs that have tons of data. Yeah. Well, now you can create a session, create your levels, filter so you just see barrels. Every time you make a new connection to a new PLC, the only thing that's going to populate into this session is the barrels. Right. Your view stays very light. Everything is dialed and specifically what you want for Axiom to be very fast. And that's where it becomes very effective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would always side with be selective about what you want, because if you're just going and grabbing everything and then it's like, well, 80% of it's not even going to be used by an end user, you know, something like that. It's just you're just wasting disk space, you're wasting up resources. So be specific about what you want to store for years.
Yeah, and I can imagine, Steve, right? From your experience, you've probably come across scenarios where customers have, I'll call it fat-fingered, right? An exclusion rule, and then all of a sudden they're inflating their storage very quickly because of a simple typo, right? That somebody might have done in an exclusion.
It's not a typo. I'll tell you what it is as an end user. It is literally just not knowing that I need to create a filter. And so we literally go in and create the session or create the connection, go see if our tags are there, we go get it. And because we don't think about the cost of retention and storage and all those things, we just care as an end user or a technician, I just need to get my Axiom screen to work.
Yeah.
Which is fine, except again, this is where we're trying to level up, right? Where we're trying to think through what's the consequence and the cost of how we do our configuration. And that's where Kepware Plus becomes very handy, because now you're starting to see a collaboration and administration of those configurations.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Yes. Fat fingering is shorthand for exactly what you're talking about, right? It's understanding the roll down and trickle down effects.
And when you get really smart like Steve, that's when fat fingering starts to come into play. Me, I just want it to work. And I want it to work as fast as I can make it work.
Yeah. I think the other scenarios too is like, you know, you can get an unlimited historian, you know, from Canary. And in that case, like, well, it's unlimited, it's unlimited tags. Yeah, so well, we can store everything if we want. And it's like, well, do you really want to store everything? Yeah. Probably not.
Well, you will store everything until your IT department calls you and says you're out of storage, and here's the cost to add storage.
Well, and it may not even be that too. It could just be the cost of bandwidth from the field to the server.
That too, yeah. All of those trickle downs.
That's right. Ray, let's cancel out of here and let the restart. You've already stopped session 1, but the play button.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and cancel this. So we have here, and I'll delete this extra group. Not that it should do anything, but I'll just keep it clean here. So we have those groups, and in this case, right, we kind of got to the top level. This is a UA server connection, and it will have multiple assets, but we're gonna bring in everything from this UA server. As we just discussed, right, you want to think about filtering and identifying if there's specific data from this server you want that, you know, and make sure you don't necessarily log information you may not want today. In this case, I understand I'm connected to a server that has 2 assets, so it's a very controlled scenario for this demo. So we're going to take everything from that server specifically. I'll hit apply, and we'll turn on this. So what we should see, you know, down here, we can kind of see from the preview that it's going through doing the browsing. It's going to start identifying all of the nodes and assets. And Steve, I'm assuming this is I've always noticed this goes in real time, so which is great. You can kind of see how long it takes to browse all of these different paths, and then come to the conclusion of, hey, I have, you know, 96 tags that are being provided. And if I remember correctly, from my little bit of training here, if I go and click on this, I can see very quickly that we do have data from the press of that UA server 4 already being, you know, sent up to the historian. Along with, right, there's a laser cutter asset as well. So there's actually 2 assets on this UA server that we're publishing up to Canary, and we can see that we have good data's changing. So I can sort of quickly confirm that information is gathering.
Now, Steve, in the meantime, while that was happening, Canary's asset model would see, hey, there's some new tags arriving over the next couple of minutes. Canary's asset model sees that new tags arrive, and if we're logging to the same data set, automatically starts to rebuild that asset model. We might fast forward that process if it hasn't already happened on your end, but in the end result, we've already shown data's logging now to Canary. Imagine a world where, again, you're subscribed at the top level. This has come down in the branch, and line 4 has been added, and now it's within an hour of it being added based on your configuration. It's now in your historian, and you never had to, as an admin, touch the historian to make that happen. That's really the second part of this solution. And then, Steve, if the model does rebuild in time, we'll just show how Axiom picks that up. We've got a good number of questions that we've saved here for the end. One of them is around redundancy. So how does UA Gateway, does it support redundancy? Can we do 2 of these?
Yeah, it's a great question. So today, there isn't any redundancy yet built into it, but on the roadmap, there's kind of 2 projects that are being worked on that really highlight around sort of the robustness from our product management team and R&D teams. One is sort of resilient UA connections. So leveraging some of the UA technology to be able to have resilient connections between the gateway and, let's say, the UA servers it's connecting to, and or the gateway and clients that can support that resiliency. And so it's kind of like tied up into that sort of overall project, right? Is the concept of having redundant paths and things like buffering of events if a connection gets lost, and being able to reestablish a connection and session and be able to get some of that information. So that's something that the R&D teams are looking at right now. I certainly don't have any. Unfortunately, I don't have any timelines for that, but it's definitely that's sort of one of those big, like, this is the next piece of the puzzle that we need to add and want to add to the UA functionality.
Francisco asked a question and said, hey, if you have an on-premise Canary historian, how can you store data from an external instance of Kepware server? So Francisco, Canary has a series of services that you can install for a distributed architecture. So the OPC logger, or I'm sorry, OPC collector for UA, for instance, that component and Canary's store and forward piece. So the sender service, which is the front half of store and forward, their buffer. So if you installed the OPC collector and the sender service local to the Kepware instance, that would give you the capability to have local logging that is then going to publish that across your network to your Canary historian. So it's really nice. It supports redundancy. It's very light in its bandwidth. Ankit says, how much data or how many days data can be buffered in case of network issue? That's all based on how much local storage. So Canary will, when something's in buffer in store and forward mode, Canary is going to write that buffer to disk. So it's not held in memory. How much disk do you give it? And it won't crash your hardware by overriding the disk. You can actually
it's first in, first out, right?
That's right. That's right. So, good questions. Let me make sure I didn't miss any more.
I saw one that I wanted to highlight about. I think it was talking about sort of the security and user IDs and how that works with the UA Gateway. So I'm just pulling up a quick diagram here just to try to highlight that response. So if we look at, this is just sort of a very simplified diagram, and let's pretend this UA Gateway here is the one that we're configuring as part of this demonstration. So the UA Gateway is going to be the one that establishes the secure connections to the downstream UA servers. So the user IDs for all of those different whether they're Kepware servers or PLCs or what have you, all of that is going to be managed through the configuration of the client interfaces here that we're establishing in the gateway. So this is where these client connections, you sort of identify what's the security policy and username and password to be able to access, so the gateway can securely connect to those UA servers. Now, what that means is from the northbound side, right, these UA clients, or in this case, it's showing like another UA gateway tunneling, the UA clients that are connecting to the gateway, they are going to be using a different user configuration that's going to control access to the UA gateway's endpoint to even see this information sort of downstream. So these UA clients don't need to know the security policies and configuration data necessary for the downstream UA servers. They're going to be authenticating with the UA gateway, and the UA gateway has the established credentials to make the secure connections to the downstream servers. So it's really, again, that sort of provides that barrier layer and simplification of UA gateway handles the security within these UA servers, and then you would use the UA gateway's credentials built into its own instance of Kepware to be able to allow certain UA clients to either connect to UA gateway endpoints or securely authenticate with them. So I hope that answers the question.
You have another authentication of the users, that the users then can come in through LDAP, or it can come in through username and password or what have you.
Yeah, regardless of what the downstream servers have. Yeah. So sometimes PLCs have sort of out-of-the-box security models that maybe aren't secure. It's a default username and password that the controls engineer didn't change. This again allows you to sort of mitigate any sort of security holes, and the gateway becomes sort of the barrier to ensure that, yes, it's using maybe an insecure type configuration, but the upstream applications aren't using an insecure model to be able to access that data.
Okay. Yeah, and then talking about the UA gateway redundancy, really talking about David's question about the layers of, it's really a proxy, right? He's talking about, I want to have a gateway that's down in my OT section. I want to have a gateway potentially in my DMZ or my business. And can I sync those, right?
Yep. Exactly. And that's where that, those things like the resilient connections.
Yeah, that's coming up.
And the redundancy features that we want to add are targeting those types of use cases. Exactly. Yeah.
Good question.
We've got our 3 presses. Axiom has now picked up a 4th. So if I scroll down, you can see the 4th press right there's where the logging on the 4th one came in.
And that didn't, Steve, you didn't do anything for that, right? That just propagated by itself, or did you have to add it?
I did. I forced it to rebuild this time, but yeah, if I didn't, within minutes, it would do this automatically. So just for today, just to make sure we wouldn't have to wait, I forced it to rebuild to find that.
But the point is that had you added it the way we added it, given the time, it would have propagated by itself and it would have just shown up.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's going to put us, I think, almost in the books, guys. We accomplished everything the project set out to do. I learned some stuff along the way. So I appreciate you guys for that. I'm really excited to see how Kepware Plus continues to develop and grow. It was freaking me out, Ray, the first time you showed me Kepware Plus and adding tags, to see tags getting browsed and added from a browser UI. It felt like a rebrand of Kepware. There are some questions.
It's really slick, and I've been trying to use it a little bit more. recently, as I'm sort of working with customers and doing demos and such, and it's really kind of slick how I'm still like astonished how well it responds to configuration changes. It's really really powerful.
And Steve, to the Canary team, well done for extending some of the. I want to say that I want to be political in how I say this. You've taken what is the best of two worlds, maybe, and brought them a bit together between two different protocols, right? So the OPC UA diehards, you've added some MQTT auto discovery functionality that really, I think, a lot of people are going to find value in, and it's surprised it's just one of those like, goodness, when I saw this, why didn't we think of that 5 years ago type of idea.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So
some people just like to click and browse, and it's fun to click the buttons.
There you go. Well, I think those people,
guys like me, we just need a UI. We want to click through a manual process to make sure it's done correctly.
That's right. One last question that came in: is there a way to notify if a service is down? Example, if a collector is down, connection to the UA server is lost. Quick answer: there is. So Canary is going to give you a ton of diagnostic tags. You can understand connections, how many things you're connected to. You can build in diagnostics to understand if you're stale. And yes, there is some chai. And great, guys. Thank you. This was really good. To the community, the recording will be live on our YouTube channel by the end of the day. I'll send out an email to everybody. As well as in that email that goes out will be a link for registration for our sessions coming up. For my own memory, goodness, that's how bad my memory is these days. I've already forgotten exactly those dates. Let's hit it one more time. May 29th and June the 5th. The last Wednesday of May, the first Wednesday of June. We'll be live with you doing, Alan, I'm going to just go ahead and say it, our most ambitious project from the sheer scope of it date. I mean, we've got 3 hours to basically highlight what used to take 3 months to implement. And I'm not nervous because I'm confident in the technologies, but I'm certainly in the back of my mind, how are we going to teach and show this in just 2 sessions? It's going to be a challenge, but I know we can do it. And thank you to the community, your continued support. We love doing these sessions with you. We hope they're adding value. Your feedback's always welcomed. And thank you so much to the sponsors that help make this possible every single time we do it. Just let's do a shout out. Software Toolbox, Canary, Flow Software, Opto22, Kepware, Phoenix Contact. Thank you so much. As a community, you can help support us by supporting them. And if you have questions about what you saw with Kepware or with Canary today, feel free to email Alan or myself directly, and we can help with those questions or introduce you to the right people inside those organizations. Kepware and Canary will do a follow-up email to everybody that was on today to see if you have questions. So look to your inboxes and see that coming, okay? All right, with that.
Great job.
So 17's in the books.
Yeah,
Steve,
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks
Alan,
a lot.
we would love to wish you safe travels, but you're much funnier from Tajikistan, so you stay put until next time.
You know what it is, Jeff? It literally is the fact that I have not worked in a week, and I just have all of this opportunity to be thinking about Integrate Live.
Yeah.
So I think I may just quit everything else and just do Integrate Live.
It's perfect. I'm for it. We just need a few more sponsors to support you.
Okay. Yeah.
All
right. I won't quit yet.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you on the next session.
See you,
Take care.
everybody.